Today we're going to talk about the surface area of rectangular and triangular prisms. In your packet, we are on page 30. So just a quick refresher. Surface area is the total area on the outside of a 3D object. Think of it kind of like the wrapping paper, or if you were to paint the outside of a box. That's surface area. Since it's area, it's always measured in units squared or squared units. So for example, like feet squared, inches squared, meters squared. That's how your units will look. So first, let's talk about rectangular prisms. So rectangular prisms looks like a regular old box. It's made up of the following faces. So we have two bases. The bases are two rectangular, parallel, and congruent faces. A lot of times people assume the top and the bottom are the bases, but we have to use whatever they tell us the bases are. So they could say the bases are these two sides right here. Those could be my bases. Or my bases could be the top and the bottom. It just depends on what the question is asking. The lateral faces, those are the four rectangular faces connecting those bases. So if we look here, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 sides connecting those two bases together. The height of the prism, or h, is the distance between the two bases. So, whatever your bases are, whether they're on the sides or they're on top or bottom, the height of your prism is always going to be the distance between those two bases. Let's talk about what triangular prisms are. Here's an example of a triangular prism right here. They're made up of the following faces. So we have two bases. They are triangles. That's why it's called a triangular prism. And they are congruent, which means they are equal. So here's my two bases, the two triangles. And then I have three rectangular lateral faces that connect those two bases together. And then the height of my triangular prism, or my H, is the distance between the two triangular bases. So it doesn't matter if my shape is laying down or standing up on the triangles, the height is always the distance between the two triangles. There's lateral surface area and total surface area. Remember, lateral is sides only. Those lateral faces only. And total surface area has the keyword total. That means it's all sides. All sides or all faces. So we have the two formulas written here, but we can also look on our star chart. If we look at the surface area of prisms, now this includes triangular and rectangular prisms. I have the two formulas written here as well. So let's break down these formulas. So, for lateral surface area, I have a big P. This means the perimeter of the base. Now, how do we find the perimeter of the base? You add all the sides up. That's how you find perimeter. You just add up all the sides of that base. Then my H is the height of the prism. So whenever we're doing lateral surface area, we have perimeter of the base. So we're gonna add up all the sides of the base, whatever shape it is, whether it's a rectangle for a rectangular prism or the sides of the triangle for the triangular prism. And then we're gonna multiply it, because it's right next to each other, by the height of the prism. Now, total surface area, if you see, it has a pH in front as well. That's because we're gonna take the lateral, the sides, and we're gonna add it to the area of the base, times 2, because there's 2 bases. So P is still the perimeter of the base. So you're gonna add up all those sides. The H is still the height of the prism. And now I have plus 2 times big B. And remember, big B means area of the base. Now, what formula we plug in for big B is determined on whether or not it's a triangular prism or a rectangular prism. Let's say it's a rectangular prism. So I would use the formula base times height, or you might say length times width. If it's a triangle, I'm going to use the formula 1/2 base times height of that triangle. So big B, what formula you use is determined by what shape the base is. So let's do an example. On page 31, question 1, we're going to talk about a rectangular prism right here. So this is a rectangular prism. In this problem, it says, list the name of the 3D figure, we just did that, and then find the lateral and total surface area. Assume that the top and bottoms are the bases. So in this case, they're telling me these are my bases, right here. Now what I like to do, I like to draw my base to the side. So my base is a rectangle, and I'm gonna list the sides of that rectangle. So I know this side right here is 5 centimeters. I use that when I cross it out. I know this side of my base is also 5 centimeters. Cross it out. So now I know all the side lengths of my base. This is my base right here. So P is the perimeter of my base. So here's my base. How do I find the perimeter of a rectangle? Well, I add up all the sides. 5 plus 5 plus 5 plus 5 is 20. So my perimeter of my base is 20. The height of my prism is the distance between those 2 bases. Or, in this case, whatever is not connected into my base right here. So this 8 has to be my height. That's the height of my prism. Then big B means area of the base. So here's my base right here. How do I find the area of a rectangle? I do base times height, or you might say length times width. So 5 times 5 is 25. So now that I know my P, H, and B, I can start figuring out my lateral and total surface area of this prism. So my formula for lateral surface area, if we remember, is P times H. Well, my P, we already said, is 20, and my H is 8. So in my calculator, I'm going to type in exactly how that looks. 20 times 8, and I get 160. So the lateral surface area of that rectangular prism is 160 centimeters. Total surface area, my formula is pH plus 2 times big B. I've already identified my variables, so my P is 20 times my H, which is 8, plus 2 times my area of my base, which is 25. And then I can type that into my calculator exactly how it looks. So I have 20 times 8 plus 2 times 25. And I get 210 centimeters squared. And that is how you find the lateral and total surface area of a rectangular prism. On the back, on page 32, let's do an example of triangular prisms. So, for each prism, we're going to shade the base. Now remember, the base of a triangular prism is a triangle. So these two right here are my bases. Again, I like to draw my base to the side so I can label all the parts and know everything I need to know about my base. So this bottom part of this triangle right here is 12. I used it, so I'm going to cross it out. The height of that triangle is 5. I used it, so I'm going to cross it out. And then I need to know the slant of that triangle. Well, it doesn't show it on this one, on this base, but it shows it on the second base. And I know these two bases are congruent. So the slant height of that triangle is 13. I used it, so I'm going to cross it out. What information is left? Well, all that's left is this 10, which shows the distance between my two bases. That means that 10 is my height. My P is the perimeter of my base. So in this case, the P here, I'm going to add up all those sides. 5 plus 13 plus 12. I can do it in my head, but you also have a handy dandy calculator that you can type it into. 5 plus 13 plus 12. Oh, my perimeter is 30. Now for big B, we're going to use the formula 1/2 base times height. So I have 1/2. The base of my triangle is 12, and the height of my triangle is 5. So in my calculator, I have 1/2 times 12 times 5, and I also get 30. So that is how you find your P, H, and B of a triangle. Now, moving on to number 5. Let's do number 6. Moving on to number 6 of this notes. I know that my bases are these two triangles right here. And I like to draw my triangles to the side. So I know the bottom of my triangle is 6. I used it, I'm going to cross it out. I know this side is 5. And you see these two tick marks? That means that those sides are congruent. So if that side is 5, that means this side is also 5. Now, I have two numbers left over that I haven't used yet. I have the 4 and I have the 8. If we look at the 8 is the distance between those two triangles. So the 8 is actually the height of the prism. So what does this 4 represent? The 4 actually represents the height of the triangle. It's part of the base. It's how tall that triangle is. So my perimeter, whenever I'm looking for the perimeter of this triangle, I'm going to add up all the outside edges of my triangle. So I have 5 plus 5, which is 10, plus 6, which is 16. And then for my big B, I have to use the formula for the area of a triangle. So I have 1/2 times base times height. So looking at my triangle, I have 1/2. The base of my triangle is 6, but the height of my triangle goes from the base all the way to the top part of that triangle is 4. So my big B, I have 1/2 times 6 times 4. So my big B is 12. So now that I know my P, H, and B, I can use my formulas for surface area to find lateral and total surface area. So lateral surface area, my formula is P times H. My P is 16 times my H, which is 8. So now in my calculator, I can type in 16 times 8, and I get 128. And this is unit squared, so they didn't tell us what the unit was. Total surface area, I have the formula PH plus 2 times big B. So my P is 16 times my H, which is 8, plus 2 times the area of my base, which is 12. And then I can plug that in my calculator exactly how it looks. 16 times 8 plus 2 times 12. Hit enter, and I get 152 units squared. And that's how you find the lateral and total surface area of a triangular prism. So now you will complete any practice problems on your Google form, and then if you have time left, you will work on the practice problems in your packet on page 31 and 32.